is a way of doing. So I have a confession that I want to share with you, and I'm going to share this confession with you in the midst of 500 people. Can I trust you? I guess to know in the chat if I can trust you. Just be honest with me. I'm about to share a big secret. I want to know, can I trust you with a secret that I'm about to share with you? Okay, so I'm going to confide in you. I am not the greatest of dancers. Can I tell the truth this morning? I'm just not, right? So like, even though sometimes like my 2-step really looks like a 1.5 step, please don't judge me. I have other things that I'm good at, but I am not the greatest dancer, which means that if I am going to dance, I have to prepare for it mentally. I have to kind of do some practicing beforehand. Like, you know, when someone's getting married, right? And there's that first dance between the spouses, right? I want you to think about that. Those individuals are doing all of this learning and preparing because they really don't know how to dance. I know I am not the only one, but then there are individuals who are phenomenal dancers. Dance is what they do, not because it's simply natural, but because day in and day out, they wake up early in the morning, they do their stretches, they know how to contort their body, they move rhythmically to the music because that is what they do. They are not practicing dancing, they are dancers. Therefore, when it comes to dancing, it is easy. When it comes to ourselves as individuals and in organization, it is so important that we build a culture and not just merely strategy, because strategy is definitely empowered when it's a culture rooted in the organization as a way of being. So that's the thing I want you to think about. Number one, is that culture is greater than strategy because culture is a way of being and strategy is a way of doing. The other thing I want you to think about is this. So I have a 4-year-old son, and a friend of mine put me on this cartoon called Avatar. And Avatar has a whole lot of gems and a whole lot of wisdom. And one of the things that we learn from a guru is this, that illusion is, or separation rather, is the greatest illusion. Things are interconnected. So the 2 things I want you to think about this morning as I go into my brief talk is, number one, that culture is greater than strategy because culture is a way of being, whereas strategy is a way of doing. And then secondly, separation is the greatest of illusions because everything is interconnected. The thought might be, well, you know, it's good to be separate, right? Don't we want to separate ourselves from the competition, or don't we want to separate ourselves? You want to be sure that you are distinct. But distinct is not the same as separation. Distinct says you are easily identifiable. You could be a part of the same structure, but still be easily identifiable. So for example, we take a look at this beautiful sunflower. The petals are indeed distinct. We can tell the petals and we can see them distinct from the peduncle, which is better known as the stem. Though these things are distinct, they are not separate because they form one sunflower. So when we actually break down all of the different aspects of a flower, there were so many things that are taken into consideration, right? You have your petals, sure, you have the filament, you have the anther, and the like. These things come together to form a flower. However, the flower cannot exist without the stem, the flower cannot exist without the petal, the flower cannot exist without the filament. Your organization is best suited when everything, yes, is distinct and equally empowered, but you're still coming to form one organization. But with that being said, understand that you as an individual impacts your organization and your organization impacts your community. And no matter what you do, you're going to impact your community. In a good way, possibly, that's what we want, but you could also negatively and adversely impact your community if your organization is not working together in order to be correctly suited to empower your community. It may not be because the individuals themselves are not coming to the organization in a way that is empowering. So I want you to think about Steve Jobs for a moment. It's so interesting that Steve Jobs is this beloved figure in the world of entrepreneurship, in the world of tech. and whatnot, even though there were some spots for criticism, right? But what was it about Steve Jobs that was found to be so appealing? I could talk about his notion of design and the importance of design in the tech space, and that indeed made him distinct. But one of the things that I think is interesting is that Steve Jobs found himself years ago fired from a company he co-founded. It is really him being able to be eventually an owner of Pixar that allows him to get back into the fray with Apple. But there was something that Steve Jobs recognized and thought of that really changed the game, not only for his life, but really for all of us. Do you remember Blackberries? I'm sure you remember the Blackberry. And remember how people thought to themselves, like the Blackberry, at least people in the company thought in Blackberry, we are too big to fail. There is no way we're going to fail. I mean, you can use it for a phone. You could also use it for an email, and we're good and we're great. But BlackBerry did not envision Steve Jobs coming with an idea that was going to revolutionize society, but also pretty much eliminate their threshold or their power hold on the industry. For Steve Jobs, the thought process was, how do we democratize the computer? See, you're looking at a cell phone, and many people will look at it as a cell phone, but what Steve Jobs recognized and thought to himself is this is not a cell phone. This has the ability to be a computer in your hand. We democratize the computer by having it easily accessible. So no matter where you go, your computer is following you as well. So the internet goes where you go, and all these various things goes where you go. And that is going to revolutionize how we view cell phones, right? But with cell phones, what comes with it? Apps. So we have it where no matter where we are, we can check various things at an instant because we have an app. And these apps, of course, collect data. Some of that data collection does not make us feel comfortable. That's another discussion for another day. That being said, it is wherever you go. It's impactful. An app has the ability to be impactful. It goes straight directly to the consumer. In essence, an app goes to the heart of the matter. I want for your organization to be an app. But in order for your organization to be an app, I need for you, the individual, to be an app. So that way, the community can be an app. But for me, app is something different. The light bulb moment for me is that there should be an app culture, but app being an acronym for something. That when you institute app culture in your lives individually, and then the individuals who are instituting that app culture institutes that into the organization so the organization can have an app culture, you will end up having an impactful experience, an empowering experience for your community. App is very specific to me. A, acknowledging someone's immeasurable worth, right? That an individual does not just have a worth that you can simply recognize, but that it actually is immeasurable. P, planting seeds with intentionality, not just planting a seed, but again, we're trying to institute culture. Culture is a way of being, but intentionality. So intentionally within your organization, because you're doing it within yourself, you are intentionally planting seeds. And then the second P is producing and actualizing capabilities. Producing and actualizing capabilities. One of the things that I think is so interesting is this. You are more likely to win the lotto on more than one occasion than to actually have life. It is insane when you think about it, right? In the beginning of the conversation, I said something to the effect of, acknowledge that you are here. I did not expect for myself to be here, but I'm grateful for those who were impactful in my life for me to be here. I want you to think about the fact that you are here in this moment, all the things that you've made through, all the things that allowed you to be and matriculate yourself to this moment, to be in this moment right now. But beyond that, the unlikeliness of you being here, right? I'm moved by this particular quote, which simply says, imagine that there was one life preserver thrown somewhere in some ocean, and there is exactly one turtle in all of these oceans swimming underwater, somewhere, the probability that you came about and exist today is the same as that turtle sticking its head out of the preserver on one try. I want you to think about the unlikeliness of your parents meeting each other. I think about the fact that my father and my mother at one point in time met in a wedding in Brooklyn, New York, but didn't know each other, didn't speak to each other. They were young. Somehow, some way, my grandmother decides that in 1974, she wants to leave New York City and go to Miami. Few years later, somehow my dad decides that he wants to be involved in the Haitian refugee movement. He was hired to be one of the leaders of the Haitian refugee movement. So he finds himself in Miami. Somehow, some way, my mother goes to the Haitian Refugee Center, looks at my father, and for whatever reason, though she didn't know how to cook then, says, I just want to cook for him. That is serious love, people. When someone says, I don't even know how to do this thing, but I want to learn the thing in order to do it for you, that is serious love, people. And he tried to escape. He tried to escape. He even had a fiance in Brooklyn. We're not going to talk about all my family stuff, but it didn't matter. Eventually, they get together. I am moved by the fact that somehow, some way, years ago, there was someone who came from Africa, who had an African name, and his last name changed to a French name, that name being Jean-Bart, and he was enslaved. But somehow, some way, he survived the Middle Passage. He survived slavery. Had a child who survived slavery, had a child who survived slavery. And then eventually, from generation to generation to generation, that individual eventually spawned paths for me to be here. The unlikelihood of us being here makes us have immeasurable worth, the kind of worth that you can't even measure. Then you think about all the ways in which you might not have been here since you have gotten life. That makes you extremely unique. There is not one before you, there is not one while there is you, and there will not be another one after you. And yet, what do we find? If you look to your left, you see a Maserati. It's beautiful, isn't it? And to your right, it's a Toyota. What's the difference, right? And so me being of Haitian descent, I know that we love some Toyotas, and I'm grateful. Right? It gets us from point A to point B. But that being said, we know that there's a difference in cost. We know that the Maserati is a lot more expensive than the Toyota. The question is why? The simple aspect of economics, it's supply and demand, right? We understand there's a limited supply of Maseratis. We understand, however, the demand is high for that. And so therefore, we know that a Maserati is extremely unique. What we find, however, is even though I've told you what I've just shared with you, right? That you are 1 in 10 times 2 million to the 685,000th power. Instead of acting like we are Maseratis, meaning that we have unique value, meaning that there was no one like us, too often we act like Toyotas, that we're commonplace, that we're just average. And if that is the thought of the individual, then that is going to be the thought of the organization. The reality is this, that when we look at an individual, and if I don't bring a kind of energy, a kind of thought that I have a unique value, then those on my team are not going to feel empowered. And what I have found is that so many in an organization have a mindset of we're just trying to survive and we're just trying to make it through and we're just trying to get by, because individuals come to the organization with that mindset. And if individuals have that mindset and organizations have that mindset, then naturally the community you're trying to serve is going to maintain that mindset as well. And nothing special can happen in that community because the organization is feeling as though we're just another organization. Because individuals are thinking, I'm just another individuals. And so here is the question that you have to or the issue that you have to grapple with, is that if you can't bring or see value in yourself, then you will not be able to bring value. Would you invest in you? Like really, truly, as an individual, would you invest in you? If you were a community member and not a part of your organization, I want you to take a serious autopsy. Would you as a community truly Knowing everything you know about your organization right now, would you invest in your organization? Secondly, I want you to think about this. One of my favorite books is The Four Agreements. Don Miguel Ruiz talks about this. Repetition is the master. It will be a natural question for you to ask, well, why would you utilize this quote when we're talking about planting seeds? I want you to take a look at this photo. In this photo, what you're seeing is that this individual is diligently and carefully planting seeds, plural. Not a seed, seeds. More than anything, the most important part of the sentence, planting seeds with intentionality, is the intent part. What does it look like for an organization to have a culture that consistently plants seeds? Too often in organizations, this is what happens. You have an individual looking to give constructive criticism. Constructive criticism does not equate, per se, to planting seeds. Don't just look for the shortcomings of individuals. Look for ways in which the information you are relaying to them is going to make them better for the next time. But what happens when you come into an organization? Think about this for a moment. Someone is new. They've never come to your organization before. They never worked for your organization before. Imagine what it's like for them to walk into your organization and the supervisor is intentionally planting seeds. Their colleague is intentionally planting seeds. Everyone who is working in that building within that organization is finding ways for that new individual to plant seeds, new information, new love, new experience, new exposure, constantly planting seeds. It's repetition. So there are people who are like, well, yes, this year I want to do this. Think about it, 92% of individuals who make New Year's resolutions don't accomplish their goals. But part of it is that there is no day in and day out of planting seeds, which means I want to lose 10 pounds. Okay, cool. Every day, what am I learning about nutrition? Every day, what am I learning about a new exercise? Every day, what am I learning about mental health and how it impacts my physique? All of those things intentionally planting seeds. What new thing am I going to read today? What quote is going to inspire me today? What affirmation am I going to share with myself today? Planting seeds. So here's the reality. If you are not intentionally on a regular basis with repetition, planting seeds in your own personal life, there is no way there is planting seeds with repetition in your organization. Can I share truth this morning? If you are not on a regular basis planting seeds in your life, because remember, everything is interconnected. Separation is illusion. If you are not doing it for yourself, how can you do it for your organization? Your organization is as successful as its culture. And when the culture has it where we are a culture that plants seeds in each other, which means I don't see you as my competition. I see you as my teammate, because we don't plant seeds in competition, but we do plant seeds in the teammate. I want you to think about a marathon. See, what happens is this, especially when it comes to nonprofits, there's a lot of burnout and a lot of disappointment because the thought is, but I thought everything is going to change. I came here this year, this moment, everything's going to change. What happened? I don't see the change because you're looking at it through the lens of a sprint. Producing and actualizing capabilities. We are not born with capabilities. Capabilities are actually produced. I'll give you an example. One day I had this colleague planting seeds, right? Had a colleague, and she said she's a runner. I mean, she is fit, right? Navy veteran, just fit. You could see the muscles, and she was just run all the time. And one day she came to me and said, "Hey, Rudy, you know, I do these marathons and I do these half marathons, but I'm always looking for someone to do it with me. You want to do a half marathon?" And I'm like, "You're crazy," right? Like that was my initial response. You're crazy. And then I looked at myself. I thought to myself, so how can we look better? Notice I said better. I don't think I look too bad. Notice it said better. So how can we look better? Okay, let's work out. let's do a half marathon. So I had this crazy, so I'm like, cool, I'm gonna do this half marathon. And the first time I ran for 3 miles, there was the Galdo half marathon thing where you do essentially some training. And the first time I did it, I'm not going to lie to you all, because I shared with friends, I can't really dance that well. I almost died, y'all. And that 3rd mile, I was like, I don't know if I could do this. And you know that when your voice gets all like cracked up, it's emotional experience. I don't know if I can do this, right? I don't know if I can do this. But sure enough, I studied the game plan, right? All right, the first week we're gonna do a 3 miles. And then eventually next week we're gonna do 4 miles. And then eventually 5 miles. And so when the time came for me to run the Fort Lauderdale half marathon, and you're going over that bridge, literally, right on Las Olas, and you find yourself making that left off of A1A, right? All of that. And I didn't walk, I ran the entire half marathon. I won't tell you the time, I was slow, but you know what? I ran it and I made it. But here is the point. At the moment of training, in the beginning of running 3 miles, I was incapable of doing it. I didn't have the capability of running a half marathon. I didn't have the lungs for it. I didn't have the knees for it. I was incapable of doing it, but the reality is I recognized that I had months to prepare, and it's a marathon. And here's what I'm sharing with you. Your job is first acknowledge that the people you are serving have immeasurable worth. Your job is also to acknowledge that you have immeasurable worth. And then you have to plant seeds with intentionality. But don't be frustrated when the community is not changing the way in which you want it to, because at times the capabilities of that community may be produced and actualized when you're no longer a part of it. But that's okay. Because if you didn't plant the seed, if you didn't acknowledge their worth and your worth, because you really can't acknowledge the worth of others until you acknowledge the worth of yourself, none of those capabilities would have been produced or actualized. So what am I asking you? I'm asking you 2 things. Number 1, really 3 things. Number 1, I'm asking you to make a choice. I'm asking you to live in a space of belief rather than believe. And what do I mean by that? Belief is being. That's culture. If I have to believe, that means I'm actively trying to believe. I'm actively trying to do it. Be in a state of belief. That's culture. Be in a state of be rather than do. Why? Because the do will automatically come with the being. If you already are the dancer, you don't have to worry about your 2-step. If you already are love, you don't have to worry about having to love someone. If you're already knowledgeable, you don't have to worry about having to carve out the desire of curiosity. I'm asking you to have a culture that is in a state of belief, because you acknowledge your worth, firstly. You acknowledge the worth of those you are serving. And by the way, you cannot acknowledge your worth until you know yourself, because part of acknowledgement is knowledge. So do you know yourself? Like, do you really know yourself? Do you really know your organization? And then the other thing I'm asking you to do is plant seeds of intentionality, right? And these things are going to therefore produce and actualize capabilities, which will allow you and your organization to do the impossible. What do I mean by that? If something has not been done before, people question its possibility, right? Before Roger Bannister ran the mile under 4 minutes, people questioned the possibility of running the mile. And then he did it. And then ever since he did it, over 1,400 people were able to do it. At Broward College, I have seen students that are the first in their family to graduate. They made the impossible possible. I want to tell you about a student, and I'll close quickly. I want to tell you about a student. Her name is Sheila Jones, a former student. Sheila Jones graduated from Central High School, barely. To tell you this day, like, I don't even know how I graduated. I barely graduated. I didn't even care about graduation, but she did it. She didn't go to college. She went straight to work. And then Sheila had a child, and her child had some special needs. And you know what? I wouldn't be surprised if somehow, some way, he was served somehow by the Children's Trust. But one of the things that Sheila recognized is that, well, although my child has some special needs, it doesn't mean that that's the entirety of his life. And so I got to also figure out my life. And so Sheila had this mindset of, you know what, I want to go to college. Let me give Broward College a shot. She was in her 30s. And so here it is that Sheila finds herself in my class. One day, Sheila and I are having a conversation. I'm just like, hey, Sheila, what's the plan after this? What do you mean? I have my associates, but I don't know if I get, no, Sheila, you're going to get your bachelor's. But I don't know if I have the money. No, Sheila, you're going to get your bachelor's. I acknowledge the worth in myself. I acknowledge the worth in Sheila. I was just planning to see, Sheila, there are scholarships. Sheila, there are things that you can apply for. So Sheila figures it out, goes to FAU, get a bachelor's degree. Sheila thinks to herself, but I'm not satisfied with a bachelor's degree. Then I'm going to go to FIU, get a master's degree. Sheila got a master's degree. Now Sheila is working on a second master's degree and is a full-time employee where? Broward College. And her son, some special needs, is an honor student at his high school. Why? Because Sheila is an example of the impossible. You are an example of the impossible. The philosopher Sean Carter, better known as Jay-Z, says, improbable takes a day, impossible takes a week. Your organization, it is not that what you're doing is impossible. It's not that your dreams are too big. You just need app culture. I'm asking you to lead. I'm asking you to lead. I'm asking you to love. I'm asking you to evolve. I'm asking you to assess what it is that you're doing, and then I'm asking you to deliver. Why do I need for you desperately? I need you to live app culture because we as a community need you. Your organization needs you. And when you're right, your organization can be right. And when your organization is right, then the community could be right because you know what it is to acknowledge worth, know what it is to plant seeds, know what it is to produce and actualize capabilities, and that allows you to lead. Because lastly, the thing I want to leave you with is this: access does not equate to equity. I'll say that one more time. Access does not equate to equity. So if you think, well, we're here, we're feeding the children, we're giving them lunch, we're giving them a little bit of a study program, no. Because all you're doing is CCE, cruelly crushing emotions. Because people are assuming that when they're looking at you and you're getting access, that maybe that's an opportunity, but access without knowledge is not equity, it's a waste of time. It's millions of dollars being spent, but no traction being had. And if you take the CCE out of access, you know what you're left with. And I'll leave you with that, right? So I want you to think about this. You are 1 in 10 times 2 million to the 685,000th power. Your brain is the one that sparked the birth of your organization or sparks this idea in your organization. You are in this for a reason. You're not in it for the check. You're in it because you believe in the impossible. And I'm telling you, the impossible is possible. But you can't just do it by happenstance. You got to build a culture direct to the heart, direct to consumer. Join me in building app culture. Thank you so much.